Well, hello there, Section 24. Starting out with a little bit of jazz music here, because F. Scott Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby is the novel of the jazz age. And I am a little wobbly. Right now I'm in day 9 of COVID, and I feel relatively blessed. I feel like I got off relatively easy. My wife is getting hit a little bit harder with it, but we outran that bug for 3 years, and it finally caught up with me. This past Monday evening I tested positive, and whoa, was that violent for the first few hours. First evening was horrific in terms of, I don't even want to talk about it. It was rough. Next day, I went over to my guest house to try to move over there to protect my wife, and alas, she caught it anyway. So I'm on day 9, she's on day 7, and I am hopeful about getting back to my precious classroom tomorrow. And if I have to sit to teach, that's fine. My students they love me well, and they will prop me back up and keep me going. And I don't have to teach full classes. I could, I'm going to shoot for 3 half-hour classes and then just see how it goes. And I hope you're well. And if you've taken a turn with this virus, then you are then you know all about it. And if I'll say a little prayer that if you haven't gotten it yet, that you won't. So we are, post Thanksgiving, obviously, and we're wrapping up a semester. As the stage manager who you're about to meet in Thornton Wilder's Our Town would say, things are winding down like a tired clock. And I always get a little sad at the end of semesters because I love teaching so much. And even though some of my joie de vivre is being tamped down by this bug, I always tell myself, okay, yeah, end of a semester, it's like a little period, like a little death. There's always spring semester around the corner, and it's always longer. So I'm very excited about that. Here's what I have for you today, something relatively simple. I want to start out with a poem from a book I'm sure I've never read from to my students. It's called Blind Huber. It's by a friend of mine named Nick Flynn. This is his first book of poetry, I think. And I'll tell you a little bit about who Huber was. And then I've just got some comments about The Great Gatsby. I'm looking ahead to tomorrow. I haven't seen my students, obviously. I took a sick day to look after my wife yesterday. So I'm looking forward to getting back to E339 and just seeing what they have to say about this novel. And I've got a few remarks. I don't have a Fitzgerald lecture. I don't have a Great Gatsby lecture. I want to put a few things before you that I think are worth thinking about. And I'm going to load up a quiz for you too on The Great Gatsby. I think it's like a 35-pointer. And I went through each question to make sure, okay, did I talk about this? Did I talk about this? Did I talk about this? It's only, integrity nudges me to do that. I hope I remember. There's one thing I don't think I spoke of yet. And if you're watching the video, you will get a bonus point. And I'll give you just a little bit of heads up on where we're going next. You've got some very relaxing work ahead of you. A little bit more writing. But we're going to turn to the last Lost Generation writer in this unit in the second half of your orphaned semester. And I just found out I'm picking up another class for your teacher for the spring. It looks like she's at least not going to make it back this year. And so my thoughts are really with her. And let's just get there when we get there. But let's start with a little bit of poetry. This one's not very long. This book, you can see it's got a bee on it and comb, because this is a book about a very important beekeeper named Blind Huber. He was a Frenchman. And apparently, almost everything that we know about honeybees, we know from Blind Huber. And even though he couldn't see, he had assistants that took notes for him that were his eyes for him. And apparently what this guy liked to do all day long is just be sat down right near the hives, and he would let the bees crawl all over him. And he just sort of intuited everything that's important about him. And so let's start with a quick Nick Flynn poem called Queen. Queen. Net suit and smoking cup, you reek fear. If we fight back, or if there isn't enough, You seek me out with gloved fingers to crush my head. When we sting, you scream. We know why you carry our white boxes to the edge of the alfalfa, to the figs and raspberries. You take our honey because we let you. We pollinate the fields because we are the fields. Anyway, a few things about F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. I was running a little bit of music there, to be really obvious. That was jazz music, and just, I feel like everybody knows this. Sometimes I feel like a schoolmarm saying things that every English teacher in the world has said, and that's fine too. But this is famously a novel of the Jazz Age. And it famously also, every English major knows that this novel is the recording of a kind of a mood. And the mood was one of jubilation, as in, let's party. There's a funny thing about great wars. They have a way of really just sort of jump-starting the economies of the countries that survive them. And when World War I concluded, when the Kaiser was finally defeated, America's economy just went just crazy, right? Everything was fantastic for a little while, until October of 1929 when the stock market crashed, and my sweet mother's family, she was there. They ended up homeless. And the music of those days was jazz music, and that's why I was playing a little Hoagy Carmichael. Fun fact, things just keep going round and round and round. And today, you know, we have, you know, electric guitars and whatever, that is, for a couple of decades now, a few decades, giving young people a way to rebel against their parents. Well, that's as old as the hills. If you were a kid in the 1920s, if you were me in 1978, you went to see Led Zeppelin. That's how you push back. But back in the 20s, you went to jazz clubs. Jazz music was it. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the guy who invented the saxophone was a man named Alfred Sax. People got so angry at him that he almost got assassinated. And as I say, year after year, every night, my guitars dream that they're saxophones. And that was the music of those days. And that's the music that you're hearing on every page of The Great Gatsby. It didn't last. Nothing does. But that's an obvious thing, and I want you to know about it. Also, I think it's safe to say that this novel is an American tragedy. In the olden days, we believe in heroes, and I love that idea. I cannot wait. All my classes are filling up nicely for the spring, and I'm up to 23 in my humanities class, and we're going to begin that course. Maybe you'll be there. It's live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 1. We're going to begin by reading the Odyssey, which is the story of a homecoming, a man trying to get home. But that's an epic, and we don't write them anymore. We don't believe in happiness. We don't believe in heroes. In the novel, which is a degeneration of the epic, we now get main characters who are degraded and destroyed, and that's the story of Jay Gatsby. He was corrupt, right? Not everything comes out clear, but he took it way, 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 way too far, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of dreaming. So it's an American tragedy, no different than Greek tragedy, no different than tragedy in William Shakespeare. We continue to live in the age of tragedy, and one of the rules of American life is pretty much everybody dies, everybody gets it. Or, to put it as I've already told you, the dreamer is going to get it. The dreamer is punished every time. The realist, Nick Carraway, lives on. I want to bring your attention, I want this can be a briefer video, and I got more coming your way this week. I got some things I want to tell you about Thornton Wilder. But I think the thing I really want to kind of concentrate on for a second is an idea that is really important to me and has become very important in recent years. And I'm picking up a book of poetry. You'll just have to pretend it's a novel. And here's the thing. I've been teaching a long time, and there's certain things that you just leave to die on the vine, and then there's certain things that as the years go by, you just go, wow, that's really something. That's interesting to me. And among the things that I find very interesting in literature is when you pick up a story, and someone within the story picks up a book and starts reading. I I'm just as enamored, just as grabbed a hold of when I'm reading a novel, when I'm reading a short story, and a character picks up a pen and starts to write. Those are fascinating moments for me because it's when literature lives in literature, when fiction lives within fiction. And very often, when a character picks up a book or a character picks up a pen and starts to write, it's bad news. You're going to be near the blood. There are some fantastic examples that I would go over real quickly with you, and I want to mention too. When I brought this to the attention of Matthew Fort, who's without a doubt one of the most brilliant people I've ever met, probably the most brilliant professor at the college, when I put this before him, he'd never really thought about it before. And now he sees it everywhere, like me. Think of Moses, right? When he goes up to get those 10 Commandments. It's a text. He's given a text. He's given 2 tablets, and he comes down the mountain, and his brother's partying, and it really makes him angry, so he smashes the text. He destroys the tablets, and he's like, oh crap, now I gotta go back up that mountain. And when he gets up there, he says to God, blot me from your book. But God said, no, that is not what happens next. What happens next is, I'm gonna give you another set of 10 commandments. Take them down there. Also in the Bible, although the Bible is replete with examples, there's one of the most astonishing moments in the Gospels for me is when Jesus is given a scribe a scroll to read, because he's a genius teacher. He's in the synagogue and they give it to him, and he reads it, and then he sets it down and he turns to the crowd and he says, today at your hearing, this has been fulfilled. And they all stare at him in absolute incredulous disbelief, and their thought is, wait a minute, you just read a book about you? You're the guy in the story? And Jesus is like, yeah, I am. And then they're like, oh, we got to kill this guy. And they do. I think of the Legend of Faust. There's 2 versions, one German, one English. And that's a story about a guy who, he's really, really smart. He's a doctor in both stories. And he gets bored one night. He's just sitting in his study, and he's just tired of all of his books. And suddenly Mephistopheles appears. Says, yeah, I got a good idea. How about if I give you unlimited power for 20 years? You can do whatever you want. The only catch is you got to sign this contract for deed and give me your soul at the end of the 20 years. So he picks up a knife and he cuts himself because he's got to sign it in blood. He's signing the contract for deed in blood. It's a super bad idea. The English version goes catastrophically, but in the German version by Goethe, which was a far finer work of art, literary art, he's saved at the end by angels, so it's not always a disaster. Maybe you know that Hamlet twice picks up a pen in his famous play by Shakespeare, the longest one of all. I got 150 tickets for that this spring. Maybe you'll be on that bus, the Guthrie. Twice he picks up a pen. Once he does it to change a play, to make the king freak out in terms of guilt. And he also changes his own execution orders and makes sure that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern die instead of him. Because Hamlet knows you can change reality. So what really strikes me about The Great Gatsby is that it's epilogue, right? In the very last chapter, Gats, his dad, journeys east to at least see what was going on with his son Jimmy, and we learned all kinds of things about Jay Gatsby. Again, there's a difference between surface and substance, right? And it's another thing I'm kind of interested in. But among the things that Gats is holding is a Hopalong Cassidy magazine. Now, I don't know if you know this, but Hopalong Cassidy was like a Western hero from around the turn of the century. And there's that theme again, right? The West. And in the back of that magazine, we can see that some years before, Jay Gatsby has picked up a pencil or a pen and made a list of ways that he wants to improve himself. If only he had done that, right? If only he had paid more attention to his own character and his own heart and his own soul. 'Cause, instead of just going for abject wealth, a collection of money to wow Daisy. Maybe things would have gone differently, but that that list of things, smoke less, save $5, crossed out, wait, $3, etc. That's him. He picked up a pen and he wrote. And well, if you read it, you're set. And I want to thank you for trying out these. The big three for me are Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, and William Faulkner. And now you've read F. Scott Fitzgerald. Some of my students were reading it for a second time, and they actually really appreciated it. They noticed things that they didn't notice the first time. And that can be a great gift, so I never feel redundant when I put like a classic book in front of students and calling them to read it again. The bonus point on the quiz that you should know about is when I went through those questions, I realized that I didn't talk neither with you nor with my live classes, my 9 and my 10 o'clock class, about how influential a particular philosophy was. It was just a terrible fire that's still burning. And it goes back to the Enlightenment, and I'm not going to go into it because it makes me grumpy. It's catastrophic and dreary. But for the sake of the quiz and for the sake of just you knowing it, existentialism was a very powerful philosophical force, intellectual force, not just planet-wide. And I'll spare you conversation about Jean-Paul Sartre and Kierkegaard and all those guys that got to go on. But when you hit that question on the test, it is definitely true that they were inspired by it, particularly Ernest Hemingway. So don't get that question wrong. And I'm gonna load that quiz up, I think today, and make sure that it's available to you across the next couple days, probably till tomorrow night. And be sure that you that you take it and have integrity too, right? Please have integrity. Academic honesty is important. I'm not firing on all cylinders here. I just wanted to. I'm at 17 minutes. I can cut this, and believe it or not, the next thing we're going to do is you're not going to have to read anything else for the rest of the semester. We've only got a week and a half before finals begins, but I am going to invite you to watch an extraordinary play, the greatest one, I think, written by an American, if it's not Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. Thornton Wilder's Our Town is so important that it has been translated into every, I think, available language on Earth, most of them anyway. And it is so beloved, country by country by country, for its universality, for its simple beauty, that every minute of the day, I'm looking out into the world here, every minute of the day, somewhere, the play is being put on. And I love that idea, that the planet is so big, or that the play is so big, that we're always watching Our Town. And in case I forget to say it, I want to say this right now. Often, rhetoric and philosophy are fields of study that I'm very interested in that help us live in the world and show us how to live. And often literature is a mirror that works badly. It shows us how not to live. So, please don't try to steal someone else's wife or husband someday, or lover. That's called infidelity. That's a bad idea. It's dishonorable, unbecoming, and a waste of time. There are a few works of literature that I can point at year after year for my students and say to them, you're going to live this. You are going to live this. And I can say that with some confidence. Not 100%, but most of you are going to live Our Town. Just take the line of the stage manager. We go off 2 by 2. And he also elsewhere says, most of us step into our grave married. And I'm glad I didn't step into my grave next week. I'll edit this video up and get it posted, and you'll hear from me very soon. Let's start with that quiz, and I'll get some journal entries up for you very soon. Good thing my lavalier mic was on. Bless you. Stay warm. We got a cold front coming up there. Brainerd, if you're in Brainerd. If you're in Greece, probably no big deal. But we have winter getting underway here. I'll see you very soon.